mentioned that you'll take a rest day when you need it, like when you feel like it. You train about 5 to 6 days a week, most weeks.
Yeah.
How does that look for you? You mentioned you hit chest and triceps today. So do you typically hit 2 body parts training session?
Yeah, I stick to the basics. It's worked for me over the years. What I tend to do, though, I have kept this into my routine from the first time I started training. I do a lot of drop sets. I've found that it works for me. I typically lift heavy anyway. I've always been quite naturally strong. I lift heavy, but I incorporate a lot of drop sets into my training. The typical thing of chest and tricep, back and bicep, quads and hamstrings, do I tend to separate that sometimes. The only body part that I hit on my own, I'd say, is probably shoulders, but then I tend to hit calves as well on that day. It's nothing overly complicated. The heavy lifting came from me watching Ronnie Coleman again, watching his videos and wanted to, replicate what he did. And that stayed with me. I found that it's worked, though, for me. It's worked over the years, keeping it heavy right up until competition, as heavy as I can. Obviously, you get weaker the leaner you get towards shows. But I find that me keeping it heavy, I believe it keeps me fuller and looking rounder. And, my muscle belly is decent anyway, so that helps me. But, people think I'll just go and throw the weights around, but my form is always on point. I've never been injured in this game, and that's testament to me just sticking to a really good form most of the time. So I'm a massive advocate for form.
And the tempo, is that important to you? Are you focusing on slowing things down at certain parts of the range, like maybe the eccentrics? Are you slowing them down a bit more? How are you doing things there?
There are days when I do that, right? There are days when I, on my leg days, I'd squat 180 kilos for 10 reps. Like yesterday, I did legs and it was just 100 kilos, but I was doing 20, 30 rep sets, right? So I mix it up. As for slowing it down on the eccentric and concentric phase, there are days when I do that as well. It depends on how I feel. So I could do that. If I really want to get that burn, I mix things up quite a lot. I don't stick to one thing. As much as I say I lift heavy, that's predominantly what I do. I do tend to throw things in there as well, right? I think it's beneficial to keep the muscle guessing sometimes, not stick to one thing. So I do tend to do that now and again, where I slow things down, really slow reps, but keep the weight really light maybe and just slow it down. And sometimes you get the same burn or even more of a burn, benching 60 kilos slowly as opposed to 140 kilos, at normal pace. There's no harm in doing that, I don't think. I think it's been beneficial for me over the years to keep things like that, not stick to one thing.
Right. You mentioned that you'll take some time to take a 60 kilo bench and you'll go slower and you really feel the muscle. You get like this massive pump, like you're like, something's going on here, something good, right?
Yeah.
And then you have another day where you're going just heavier, maybe double the amount of load, but you're moving quicker. But you might not feel the muscle, but you still know something's happening. Like you're working hard. So would you say both are potentially beneficial for muscle growth? Like,
absolutely.
Why not add both? Like some people, they want to be in like this camp or this camp. It's like, you can do both. Like you're allowed.
When you're training hard, right? You feel that burn in that muscle. You know when you're hitting it, right? So does a muscle know when it's 160 kilos, 140 kilos, as opposed to when it's 60 kilos? All it knows is pain and knows it's feeling that burn, right? So that's what you're aiming for. If I'm not fatigued by the end of my session, if I do a shoulder session, right? And at the end of that session, I could still go and do 10 pull-ups like I could do normally, then I haven't probably hit it as hard as I should have. Right? I should be fatigued at the end. I shouldn't be able to do 10 pull-ups at the end like I did at the start, because I should have fatigued the muscles. And that's how you grow. Because essentially all I'm doing is punching the hell out of it. If you think about it that way, I'm beating the hell out of the muscle, and I wanted to recover and grow by eating and resting when I get home. I'm not growing in the gym, I'm just punishing it in the gym, right? I know that's very basic for bodybuilders, but for someone else who isn't, that's what you have to understand, and you should be repairing it when you get home by eating the right stuff and resting and doing it all over again.
When you're talking about heavy, specifically for the listeners as well, you're talking about maybe like sub 10 repetitions? Like, are you thinking about a rep range when you're talking about heavy specifically? Or are you just thinking as heavy as I can for this rep range, whatever it might be?
In my head, 8 reps is a minimum I'm always aiming for. As a bodybuilder, I think I'm aiming to feel that burn every time, right? So if I'm doing 2 or 3 reps, that's all good. For powerlifters, I believe, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but in my head, I'm aiming to feel that burn. So it may be heavy, but I still want to feel that I've got no reps left in me. I'm not doing that every set, but I'm aiming to feel that burn every time. And I'm trying to push myself to feel that burn every time. And that's what it's about for me. So 2 or 3 reps for me, that's what powerlifters would do. For me as a bodybuilder, I'm training to increase the muscle size, essentially. I need to feel that burn. So the rep range for me is going to be a minimum of 8. And sometimes, like I said, for legs yesterday, I was doing 30 reps. Even I did a 50 rep set to start off. That's how I've done it.
And that's for legs, the 50 rep set that you were talking about there?
Yeah. and my legs are killing me today, more so than when I did 180 kilos last week, right? So
I think it is body part specific, exercise specific, where you feel like, hey, this really high rep stuff, I feel like this is benefiting this body part. But then on another body part for another exercise, you're like, this high rep stuff is just, it feels like it's not working for it. The low rep stuff works better. The 6, the 8, the 10. I go down as for 6 for certain things just because I'm really going a bit slower. So again, it depends on how fast you're going to, right? I think those are other things like, so the 5 to 6 day routine that you're following, right? You got the chest, the triceps, the back, the biceps, and then you got the legs, the hamstrings, quads, the shoulders, and then, so that's 4. That's like kind of like a 4-way split, right? Do you repeat it on the 5th day, or do you, like, how do you normally go about that if you're training 5-6 days a week? I'm just curious.
It's not even that I plan a rest day. I feel that my body needs a rest. As you get older as well, you're more in sync, I think. So I found that my body tells me now when I need a rest. Whereas when I was a bit younger, it's like, oh no, man, I could just do 7 days a week. I could feel I could just keep going, right? It's like when you were younger and you used to go out to the nightclubs, right? You could go out and then you'd be fine the next morning and you could go again. I think I'm more in sync with my body now. My body tells me when I need that rest. So I would do, like you say, I'd do those splits. If I need a rest, I would take a rest, but it's literally repeat again.
So sometimes you might be hitting body parts 2 times in a week.
Easily.
When you're doing that, like, let's say you're going to repeat that second leg day or that second whatever body part it is, you're going based on how you feel. Like if you had a heavy day, like just that week, and you're feeling a little bit like, okay, today feels a bit more of a higher rep, that you'll kind of do that kind of style, like where you go based upon how you feel.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what? My biggest default sometimes is my ego. I get to the gym and sometimes I'm going to do a light day today on legs. I'm just going to do high reps. And then I get there and I'm like, no, I'm just going to stick full plates. For the most part, what you said before, I try to mix it up. If I go heavy one week, or if I start off doing squats, my next session I'll start off doing hamstrings, stiff leg deadlifts, for example, or whatever, right? So I try to mix it like that for the most part.
Do you typically log book? Like you're like, okay, I did this on this, because this is a big thing. Okay.
Never done it.
Okay.
Never done it. I've never been one to walk around with a notepad, right? Just sticking stuff off. I've never done it, right? I do everything on feel. And maybe it's to my detriment. I don't know.
To me, who I've spoken to, what I've experienced, I think there could be value on both ends, depending on the psychology of someone too. Like for one person, it might motivate them to keep a logbook. That person can learn from kind of your method in terms of, hey man, you got to adjust too on the fly, or you could hurt yourself, right? So I think there's like almost pros and cons, and something to be learned on both ends of this. That's just my take on speaking with all you guys, man, all you champions, right? So.